it's important for us to have narratives that push back against this. I mean, it's, if China says, oh, here's America, what a terrible place. And then you have our news agencies saying, oh, yeah, it really is a terrible place. Well, great, then they win.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm joined now by James S. Robbins. He is the Dean of Academics at the Institute of World Politics in Washington, D.C., and he's the author of This Time We Win, Revisiting the Tet Offensive. Jim, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Andy.
So, Jim, you have a piece in Real Clear Defense today about the U.S. Agency for Global Media. That's the umbrella organization for the Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, the Middle East Broadcasting Network, and a few others. So President Trump made news when he named Kari Lake to head VOA, but now he's named his nominee to head the whole thing, and that's Brent Bozell III. So in D.C., we sometimes say personal is policy. What does Bozell's nomination tell us about the direction we'll see when it comes to public diplomacy under this administration?
Well, I think we're going to see change. I mean, like with most of the Trump appointees, you're seeing people who may have a very different approach to things than their predecessors in the Biden administration. I think with Brent Bozell in particular, as someone who has a background in following media, being a critic of media, things like this, he's going to go into USAGM and try to clean it up because this has been a troubled agency for a long time and it needs a lot of help.
So, there's been this long debate over public diplomacy and the role of VOA and the radios, as they're called. On the one hand, they're tools of statecraft. That is, they are arms of the government, and they therefore should advance America's interests. That's one way to look at it. This gets them labeled as propaganda. On the other, there's this idea that by mimicking news organizations and putting journalism first, they sort of model the values that truly make America great. First Amendment, free speech, that sort of thing. So how, in your view, do you square the circle of those two competing views? And how do you think the Trump administration will view that?
Yes, that's an enduring controversy because, as you say, anything that comes out of the government is going to be tagged as propaganda. Of course, our adversaries say it's all a CIA operation, which is not true, but they make those claims. But we would like to have free speech. The thing about this is, for models of free speech and the free press and so forth, well, we have that. We have the New York Times, we have the Washington Post, all the major media, the cable outlets, Sirius XM, the whole Real Clear suite of publications. We have this. We don't need the government to spend $1 billion simply to show the world what a free press looks like, because they don't actually believe it's a free press. But what we can do with USAGM, Voice of America, and others, number one is tell America's story. Tell the truth about America. The truth doesn't mean tell every ugly little thing like the mainstream media love to do, but tell the good side of America as we're reaching out to the rest of the world. Tell them some of the great things that are going on here, some of the positive initiatives. That isn't really propaganda per se, it's public diplomacy. It'd be propaganda if we were lying, but no one is saying that. Just tell the truth about our country. And the second thing, and very importantly, is try to penetrate into the closed societies where all they get is propaganda from their own governments. Try to get inside Russia, get inside the Great Firewall of China, get inside Iran, and give them news about their own countries that they may not be getting because their own governments have been squashing all that down. And to me, that offensive part of this mission is even more important.
And did this sort of mission get sort of lost at the end of the Cold War? Because it did seem to me that at the end of the Cold War, there was a rethinking, maybe not as much as there should have been, about U.S. foreign policy. And one of the ideas was that these agencies, if they were going to survive, and it's very, very hard to close down anything in D.C., as we're about to find out, is that they sort of glommed onto this mission of being sort of, like I said, mimicking the paid press or the sort of our normal press, if you will, the mainstream media. What do we call them? We call them legacy media now.
Oh, yeah.
uh, and that was sort of their cause for being. And I think what you're saying is that might have been slightly wrong. That really what they're there for is to help, as you say, tell America's story abroad, but also advance America's interests.
Yeah, you can go all the way back to World War II when Voice of America started, which was, again, to try to get information to the Axis powers, the people inside those countries who weren't getting the truth from their own countries. Then the U.S. Information Agency, which was stood up to continue this mission. Edward R. Murrow, former head of CBS News, then became John Kennedy's director of USIA. And he wrote a lot about how, you had to dance that line between just telling the truth and propaganda and how to stay on the good side of that line. I mean, there's a great history here of this. Charles Wick under Ronald Reagan, a very effective guy in terms of promoting America's message during the end of the Cold War and helping bring about the end of the Cold War. But as I said in my article, the information arm was punished for its success because people said, well, we're at the end of history now. There's no more problem in the world. We can just like disband all this stuff. Well, instead, they kind of cut the budgets. They reconfigured it under one umbrella, USAGM, and then changed the mission. It's like, well, now with the end of history, we don't need to be on offense anymore. We can just sort of have a government news organization. Well, fine, but it isn't the end of history. We do have adversaries that we need to address. I mean, there's an information war on, and in some ways, the Chinese, the Russians, I mean, they eat our lunch at this. They're really good at it. They have long-standing commitments to information warfare against our country. So it's important for us to have narratives that push back against this. I mean, it's if China says, "Oh, here's America, what a terrible place," and then you have our news agencies saying, "Oh yeah, it really is a terrible place." Well, great, then they win. That's not what we want. We want to have something that can oppose their disinformation and then get real information to their people. I think that really encapsulates the mission I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm talking with James S. Robbins. He's the Dean of Academics at the Institute of World Politics in Washington, D.C., and he's got a piece today about public diplomacy in Real Clear Defense. You can read it there. So, Jim, one thing I think about is that these organizations, as you've been describing, were conceived during the Cold War. And we were basically locked in this ideological battle with communism. One feature of the Cold War was the information in the Soviet bloc, as you pointed out, was suppressed. So you had this sort of information scarcity and you had to pierce the Iron Curtain. And that's still true for countries like China, certainly North Korea, Russia. But we have these other countries, I'm thinking about the Middle East in particular, where that information scarcity is sort of over. It's a different world. We have what I would think of as information abundance. There's satellite channels, there's internet channels, there's broadcast. So have these agencies sort of adjusted to that new information reality where they, it's kind of a different world and probably calls for a whole different set of ideas and muscles, if you will.
Well, there are different approaches to this. Some agencies, like we have Al Hurra, the Middle Eastern Broadcasting Network, and they have like talk shows or like news kind of debate shows. They do news programming, they do entertainment programming. It's a whole bucket of different things. At Voice of America, there are different language services that reach out specifically to different countries in their own language. And again, it's just a mix of different information. But what I think the agencies have to start looking at is all of the new media ways of getting the word out in those regions, through the internet, through, I don't know, podcasting, through posting on X, doing citizen journalism in those countries, giving people, maybe they're dissidents or maybe they're people who want change, say in Iran, the ability to kind of upload directly to show here's what's going on. We can't show you through regular channels, but we can show you through this. And so I think having that entrepreneurial and kind of adaptive mindset, which was true in the past, certainly when we were trying to get, shortwave radio through to dissidents behind the Iron Curtain, things like that. We still have that today, and it could be true in the closed societies. It could be true in the open societies or relatively open societies in that region. But, harness the people who are there to tell the story. And I think that kind of, innovative thinking is what we need.
Yeah. So I've got about a minute left here. I am just anticipating, like with everything that Trump does, and you saw it with Kari Lake, you saw it somewhat with Bozell, just a pushback from inside the organization, from outside the organization, from media organizations. How do you think this will play out?
Oh, there's going to be a lot of pushback, but the Trump team doesn't seem to care about pushback. They just push back harder. So I think that once Mr. Bozell and Ms. Lake get in there and start making the changes, that it's going to work out, and they're really not going to care about the critics. Even Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, said that USAGM was a failed organization. It desperately needs help.
Well, Jim, thanks a lot for being here. I've been talking with James S. Robbins. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. That's our program for today. Hope you'll join us tomorrow for more Real Clear Politics. Have a great evening.